Greetings, fellow detectives. Wizard Kitten here, bringing you my review of the 32nd mystery in the Nancy Drew series, Nancy Drew Sea of Darkness. As usual, my reviews are based on 5 separate categories. Those categories are plot, characters, setting and design, entertainment and gameplay value, and music and vibe. Each of those categories is scored on a scale of 1 to 10, and then those scores are all added up for a final total possible score out of 50, and then I assign a letter grade to each game as well. Just a brief warning before we get started, my reviews do contain some mild plot spoilers, no major spoilers about things that might happen in the game, but more spoilers related to things you might see in the promotional materials, such as characters that you might encounter and things that you might get to do. So without further ado, let's get started with the plot of Sea of Darkness. So Nancy was referred for this mystery by Moira Chisholm from The Silent Spy, and she was referred to a woman named Dagny Silva, who is essentially a treasure hunter, and has kind of run into a snafu with her latest treasure hunt, and has called Nancy in to help her sort things out. This particular treasure hunt is related to a treasure that is supposedly hidden on or around a ship called the Hurlekide, which crashed in a small town in Iceland called Skipbrot many years previous. And there have just been rumors about a treasure on that ship for quite a long time. Dagny has been exploring the ship and trying to find the treasure, and her treasure hunting partner, a man named Magnus, goes missing. And she's worried that maybe he ran off the treasure. People in the town are worried that maybe Magnus fell off the ship and drowned. So Nancy is kind of called in to solve 2 sort of mysteries. She's called in to figure out what happened to Magnus and what happened to the treasure, if there is even a treasure. So, pretty straightforward. We have a nice treasure hunting mystery. Those can be really fun when they are done well, and good news, I think this one is done really, really well. I really loved the original story of the Hurlekide and how it was just so interconnected to the history of Skipbrot. You get to explore that a little bit when you're going through the mystery, and it makes it feel a lot more real. And it makes it feel like there's a lot of stakes to solving this mystery, which I love. I also love how they added intrigue to this particular story by having things just kind of move and change. The environment isn't static. The characters aren't static. Things are different throughout. I mean, think about Soren and his ice pack, Gunnar and his big knife, Dagny going missing. All of these moving parts lengthen the mystery and they make it feel more real. I love that. It makes it so much more interesting to play through a mystery when things change and then Nancy has to react to those changes. I just love it. There's also just beautiful histories for all of the characters. It connects to the overall story and the idea of the treasure hunt really, really well. I honestly think this is the best executed treasure hunt in the entire Nancy Drew series. I think previous attempts at a treasure hunt, like in Ransom of the Seven Ships, haven't necessarily gone nearly as well, so I was really excited to play this game and see how successfully they were able to convey that particular type of mystery, because I think it's a classic mystery plot. Honestly, I think everything works so very well in this storyline, that the only problem I actually have is that it's pretty easy to figure out who the culprit is. They make it a smidge too obvious. The culprit kind of messes up in ways that make it fairly obvious who they are, but I appreciated literally everything else. Honestly, if I hadn't been able to figure out who the culprit was within the first hour or 2 of gameplay, I probably would have to give the plot of this game a 10 out of 10, which is just awesome. But because I was able to figure out who the culprit is, I'm going to give the game a 9 out of 10 for plot. Next, let's move on to characters. So we have 4 physical characters in this game that we get to interact with. There's Dagny Silva, the woman who brought us in for this mystery and a treasure hunter. She is not a native Icelander. She is from the US. And then we have Elizabeth, who is, her family has lived in Skipbrot for many years, many generations. So she's very much established in Skipbrot, and she knew Magnus quite well, the guy who goes missing. So then there's Elizabeth. Then there is Gunnar Tonneson, who again is very established in the town of Skipbrot. His family has lived there for a very long time. Gunnar really does not like outsiders. He does not like tourists. He does not like people who he feels like do not belong in his small town of Skipbrot. I do like how they really play on that small town atmosphere. Gunnar's very gruff. He's a big guy. He's very fun to interact with, though. Very funny. And then we have Soren, who grew up only 10 miles away from Skipbrot and yet is kind of considered an outsider to native Skipbrotians. But he got a degree in history and kind of studies Viking history, so he works through the cultural center in the town of Skipbrot, and he is a native Icelander. So those are the 4 characters that we get to interact with throughout the mystery. I think this cast of characters is really, really awesome. They are so fun to interact with, and the character interaction feels very deep, it feels very natural, but it's still extremely entertaining. But even more important than that, I like these characters because they feel like real people. They have legitimately interesting backstories that come full circle, and they're just beautifully explained. When you find out the histories of some of these people and how it relates to the overall plot, it just deepens the plot and gives it a whole other level of meaning, and it makes you care about the characters a lot more. It feels so beautiful, just really, really beautiful, and I really like it. I also like the look of them a lot. The overall design of all of the characters is amazing. Gunnar definitely gives me Holt Scotto vibes from Danger on Deception Island. He's got his big sailor sweater, and Soren's got this epic sweater on, and even Elizabeth has an epic sweater too. Like, they just have some awesome sweaters, and as somebody who lives in Minnesota and deals with cold winters, I appreciate a good sweater. So I do really like the design of them. And just the variety of personalities is awesome. The way that they interact with Nancy is different based on their views of should we accept outsiders or should we not accept outsiders. And I love that it's totally different, but they all have opinions on one another as well. I think the characters are super, super solid, and I give them a perfect 10 out of 10. Next, let's move on to setting and design, which considers where the mystery takes place and how that interacts with the mystery as a whole, how that's incorporated into the mystery as a whole. So as I mentioned, this mystery takes place in Iceland, and I am happy to say that Icelandic culture and just information is everywhere in this mystery without overshadowing the plot. Sometimes when Nancy goes on these cases that are not domestic, that are not within the United States, the mystery tends to focus more on the location and less on the actual story. But I think this mystery does a really nice job of balancing that. We get to learn a ton about Iceland just in the cultural center. I love that they have that little museum that we can walk around and kind of learn a little bit about it. When you're walking through the Misty Skip, the local pub, you can learn Icelandic vocabulary. You can make Icelandic food, sort of. You can sort of do that in the Misty Skip. It's one of the puzzles you can use for making kroner, which is the local money. The history of the ship kind of goes along with the setting of Iceland, and then you have this just beautiful snow that's falling the whole time. You have the Aurora Borealis, the northern lights, that are shining, and sometimes they're more visible than others, and I love that because it's exactly how they are in real life. It's dark all day long, which is exactly how it would be during that time of year in Iceland. All of those things are not super obtrusive, but they totally convey that you are in Iceland. Just having that beautiful falling snow, those beautiful northern lights, it makes me feel like I am there, but it doesn't distract me from the reason that I am there, and I absolutely love that. Also, just the design of the locations themselves is stunning. The Hurleykeid is beautiful. It might be a little bit too pristine, but I guess it's going through a restoration process, so that makes sense. But it is just so, so pretty. And the variety of locations that we can explore in this game is awesome. You can go on the ship, you can be in a lighthouse, there's a cultural center, you can look at local houses, like there's ice caves, there's just so many cool locations that you get to fully explore. None of them felt stagnant to me, and none of them felt like they were like I had to stop and I wasn't able to explore them as much as I wanted. They all felt very fully fledged out. I just really loved it. I appreciate how the locations also change just ever so slightly over time. The game really just lets us relish the exploration of this beautiful location, and that makes me really happy. So I give setting and design a perfect 10 out of 10. Next, let's move on to entertainment and gameplay value, which considers how fun a game is to play and how fun it is to replay. I am happy to report that this game is super duper fun. It is really puzzle heavy, like a lot of the modern Nancy Drew games that we've seen. They definitely rely a lot on puzzles. But unlike some of the previous modern games that I've reviewed, the puzzles in this one are nicely spread out and they feel pretty reasonable. Even the extra tough ones they make sense given the context of a treasure hunt. They make sense given what we're doing. Ned actually explains it really well when Nancy calls him on the phone once, is that whoever hid this treasure in the first place would make it really difficult for somebody to be able to find it. They would spread the pieces out all over the place. They wouldn't make it easy. So naturally, it's not necessarily easy for Nancy to find it, and she needs to solve a lot of puzzles. So I appreciate that the game that makes sense in this context, and I appreciate that the game kind of explains that to us along the way as we are doing things. I also appreciate that some of the puzzles that feel a little bit like silly or unrealistic, they're made fun of a little bit. Just an example of that is when Nancy is fixing a heater in the game, and Dagny is telling her how to do it. Nancy says, "I'm pretty sure that's not how electricity works," and they just kind of joke around about it because, yes, the way Nancy is fixing this heater is definitely not how electricity works, but it makes the puzzle feel better. It makes me feel better that the game is making fun of itself a little bit and recognizing yeah, obviously this isn't how electricity works, but we're going to do this as a fun puzzle and we hope you're okay with that. I appreciate that acknowledgement. I like that a lot. And overall, I really appreciate that this game doesn't just try to entertain us with only puzzles. I think a lot of the modern games, her interactive team knew that detectives wanted longer games so we could play them for that first time, that first experience for a longer period of time. And kind of the main way that they decided to go about that was by adding a ton of puzzles to make the game feel longer, which isn't the best way to do it. I mean, if you're going to lengthen a game, you can add into all aspects of the game, not just the puzzles. So this game is a good length. It's a nice long length, but it still has a nice balance of challenging puzzles, a nice balance of character interaction, and a nice balance of exploration. It's made longer because all three of the core components of a mystery are made deeper and made longer. And I really love that. I love that this game isn't just puzzle based. It's got puzzles, it's got characters, it's got roaming around to different places, it's got solving the overall mystery. I really like it. I think it's definitely a really fun game. I love delving into the ship's history, learning about the residents of Skipbrought and their shared histories, and for the most part, I enjoyed the puzzles. There's a couple that I'm like, grr, but the fact that there's only a couple, and I think that's fine. I think there are a couple puzzles that I should be like, grr, with. So overall, a solidly fun game. Really enjoyed it. Very proud of this game. I'm going to give it a perfect 10 out of 10 in the category of entertainment and gameplay value. Finally, let's move on to the category of music and vibe, which considers the music of the game and the overall atmosphere of the game and how it is conveyed. All I can say with this one is, wow. The soundtrack is easily one of the best in this series. They have the signature song, which they started to introduce a couple mysteries ago, where there's kind of a song with lyrics that actually goes along with the mystery. And the song for this is just so pretty. And we find out that it's a family song that's been passed down for generations to help just with the mystery. And I think that's so cool. In addition to it just being a beautiful song, and all of the other songs that go along with it fit the location so perfectly. We have some ship kind of yarns where it definitely feels like sailor music, which I love. And then we have this quieter, more moving music that follows us in some of the places where we would want things to be a little bit more quiet and a little bit more somber. So I really liked that. The music is awesome. And the vibe is awesome. There are so many just little things that they did in this mystery that makes the vibe one of the best in the series, in my opinion. When you're walking through the ice cave, you hear these like muffled sounds that are super creepy. You hear ice crumbling. You can hear footsteps in the snow. There's like creepy ship noises, the ship kind of groaning and contracting as you are exploring or solving a puzzle. I love that because it makes you feel slightly uneasy. It's like, oh, was that noise I just heard the ship? Or was that someone walking down the floorboards coming to get me? You know? You never really know for sure, and I just really love that. I think it makes the experience feel so much more real. It makes you feel like you're actually there. And I love that this game kind of conveys a constant feeling of being on edge, because Nancy's an outsider, and it's been made very clear that outsiders are not always welcome in this small town. So feeling on edge the whole time, feeling curious the whole time, I just love it. And you feel beautiful the whole time too, or the setting feels beautiful the whole time because it's just so pretty. So balancing that is really, really awesome. I think the vibe is outstanding. I give music and vibe another perfect 10 out of 10. So if we add up our scores for this game, we have a 9 for plot, 10 for characters, 10 for setting and design, 10 for entertainment and gameplay value, and 10 for music and vibe, for a final total possible score of 49 out of 50 and a final grade of an A. Now, I love that the last game that we've been left with for several years during this hiatus of game creation was a really good one. That makes me feel a lot more confident about the direction of the series, because I think this game was really, really solid. And in seeing the trailer for the next mystery, Midnight in Salem, after this, makes me a little bit sad because we have been waiting for it so long. But it does give me hope, because if this was the mystery right preceding that, then I can think that maybe Midnight in Salem could be a pretty great game as well, because I think this one is really, really good. I think it has so many beautiful components that I just really want to celebrate. I think this game is awesome. It's definitely out of the modern games, one of the best, if not the best, in the modern iterations. Kind of along with Ghost of Thornton Hall. So do I recommend that you play this one? Absolutely. I don't think the scare factor is too overwhelming in this one, so I think it's a great game for detectives of all scare factor levels. I think it is a tougher game, but I think you can really push through that, and playing it on Junior Detective should help with a lot of those puzzles. I just think it's a fantastic one, and I think it's a great one to play in the series, especially out of the modern games. The graphics, the design, the story, all of it comes together in a really beautiful way. So should you play Sea of Darkness? Yes. Yes, you definitely should. Thank you so much for listening to this review, fellow detectives. I do hope that you enjoyed it. I will be posting more reviews, hopefully in the future, as hopefully more games come out, and doing some more Nancy Drew themed content videos as well, so keep an eye out for those. Please feel free to comment your thoughts down below, what you thought of this game. I'd love to hear any different perspectives, or if you have the same perspective, I'd love to hear that too. Also, please feel free to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for that more Nancy Drew content coming up. Thank you so much for watching, fellow detectives. I will see you soon.